What's up, everybody? This is Pastor Jason Jones, and you're checking out Power of Care, my sister Brianna.
Hey, guys.
And what you share comes out of the overflow of this is what God has been doing for me and through me and in me. That comes from the devotional space that bears itself out in the teaching space where, all right, now I'm sharing out of some realness and some real honesty and transparency, because I've allowed God's word to deal with me individually. And because it dealt with me individually, I can have some level of assurance that it'll deal with the other people who I share it with, in whatever their individual spaces or individual journeys or seasons or whatever in their lives, that it'll meet them where they are, just like it met me where I was. So that's a constant tension. It's a constant fight to manage time and to carve out time, and some people do it first thing in the morning, and which is probably best. I tend to do it either in the morning or like there's a space in my day, like if I'm between meetings, I'll just like pull something up and start reading and start doing it that way. If you're not careful to sort of protect the devotional time and the devotional reading of scripture, right? As it pertains to what do I need to do? Like, what does Jason need to be a better guy, to be a better husband, to be a better person, be a better son, or and those kinds of things. Be a better. I'm not a father yet, but I'm a godfather. With that kind of. How can I be better? What is God saying to me? And to not let the itinerary, there's a date on the calendar, and I know I'm responsible for delivering a message, to not let that preparation on a constant basis override
that personal, intimate time with God.
Yep.
That's so important, because you talked about balance and how you don't believe in balance.
And we say this a lot. I got it from my pastor. Shout out to my pastor, Keith Battle.
Pastor Battle.
But rhythm is a word that we tend to use a lot. I don't believe in balance. I don't. And when I say that, and for anybody who's listening to this, I don't mean to be pejorative in that we shouldn't make an effort to properly give attention to things that have value, right? But when we conceptualize balance, where it usually what we mean is like, all right, I spent 30 minutes here, so I need to spend 30 minutes here. Or, especially as believers, as Christian believers, we often talk about balance as this thing where, because I've spent a certain amount of focus on my Christian practice, right, that I've also got to have an equal amount of fun, and I've got to spend an equal amount of time, watching movies and, going on trips and all that. Like that, that's not how it works. Balance is the wrong word. I prefer the term alignment. From where I'm coming from, alignment often is used in the corporate space. It means that the organization's resources, its initiatives, its strategies, its time, its human capital are aligned or arranged in a way that will achieve the goals and ultimately the purpose of the organization. And I believe the same is true with us in our lives, that our time, our treasure, our attention, our focus, our schedules, right, how we strategically arrange our lives, that we've got to align those things with the things that are most important for our lives in order to achieve our purpose, or the goals that we've put in place that move us in the direction of our purpose, or the thing that, your why, Like why? Your why? Why are you here? What are you here to do? Right? What are you here to accomplish or to get done? Or who are you here to serve? Or who are you here to help? And that we align our lives in a way that move us in that direction. And that doesn't mean that you don't try to give the proper amount of time to the various things or the various hats that God's called you to wear at a particular time. It just means that that value or that weight can shift drastically based on what's most important at a given time. And that for me, it has been more helpful to not beat myself up, right? When I haven't spent, when I haven't given a particular thing the focus I would have yesterday, because today it is most pertinent for me to focus on this particular thing. So for example, my wife and I, or shout out, hey baby, my wife Christina.
That's my sister, hey girl.
We are both very busy people. So because we're busy, it means that we may go a few days without, necessarily spending quality time together. And quality time could be different things, right? It could be couch time, Netflix and chill,
Right.
Or Hulu and chill. Happens a lot in our house. It could be, we're going out to dinner or whatever that is, right? But if in a given week, there may be times where, and I may be letting the cat out the bag. I don't know if she knows this, but there are times when I can sense that we've been, distant, right? Okay. So she's been running, I've been running, I've gotten home late, she's already asleep, that kind of thing, right? And there may be days where it's like, we haven't done anything in a few days, or we haven't done anything in a week. Like we haven't hung out really in a week. Not that we didn't see each other or have conversations, but that we haven't sat down and watched TV and vegged out together or hung out, gone out somewhere or something like that. Right. And I'm not, again, this is an area where we're still figuring it out as our seasons change in our lives, right? But if I sense that, then that means even though there may be something else that's important on a given day, right? Even though there's something that requires my attention, there's something that, that really requires my energy, that I've got to make a determination to then align my focus to say, you know what, my time will be better spent, because the most important, most pertinent thing in the goal of me ultimately being a good husband and being a good father someday, and building a family and building a legacy and those kinds of things, that in order to continue moving in that direction, that today I've got to stop and spend time with my wife.
I love that, because that goes back to the alignment.
Yes. And
your purpose here is,
Right. Yeah, and part of my purpose, one of the things I know that I'm completely certain, I don't know if, I hope other men feel like this, but, as a husband, the fact that I'm a husband means that God called me to love my bride, just like Christ loved the church. And what did Christ do? He laid his life down for it. Yeah. So in the process of doing that, and trying to to have a church that he would present without spot or wrinkle, as the word says, right? And trying to love my wife in that same way, that there are times when I've got to say, there are lots of things that are important. But the most pertinent thing right now is this. I use another analogy where, another analogy I would use is like if you've got two children, you love them both equally, right? They both are, the apple of your eye, right? I don't know if parents have favorites, but, right. But you've got two children that both, need your attention. Balance would kind of say, well, I took this one to the movies this week, so I've got to take this one to the movies this week. In the way that we kind of often conceptualize balance. And, I'm not saying that that's how everybody does it, but when we conceptualize balance, it usually looks like I did this here, so I've got to do the same here. Where alignment would mean that, this child had a rough week in school, right? and that even though you love both of your children equally, I know that I've got to spend a little extra time and attention with this one because I know this one's okay. Like this one's cool, and that, you know, they won't be damaged or hurt by me spending a little extra time with this one. But this one needs a little extra attention from daddy. And I hope that makes sense. But that's alignment versus balance. And you know, balance in the way that we kind of traditionally conceptualize it. So with that said, when I look at my life and how I try to arrange things, I've learned that for me, the idea of alignment has been more helpful and has rung more true, especially because of how my brain works. A lot of my dominant traits are in the strategic domain. So I'm looking at how to get things done and kind of thinking things through that way. So for me, the idea of alignment rings more true because there's always a strategy that we've got to employ in our lives in order to get things done. And I think for me, as I look at, you know, even the concept of how I pursue purpose, that is more obedience focused and journey focused than destination focused.
That's freeing because I think a lot of times, I don't want to just put it on a generation, but during this time, we have that, I want it now, I want to know it now, how do I get to my purpose? Okay, I'm anointed, so let's go, God. You know, where when you say it's not a destiny, it's destination, it's a journey.
Yes,
right?
yes. And the reason, so here's another way that's so freeing, that because it's a journey and not a destination, it means that you're always becoming.
Yeah.
And isn't that true?
Yeah,
right? When true. You know, Paul said, I haven't arrived, I haven't apprehended, you know, I haven't acquired or attained the thing that I was apprehended for, right? Yeah. Like, there's never a point where any of us who call ourselves believers can exhaust God. At what point do you get to where, you know what, I got God all figured out, I've learned all about him, that, you know, everything about him that I could ever know, I've searched out every part of my gifting and everything that he's put in me and everything that he created me to be. Show me the person, right? You know, other than Christ, right? Show me the person that has attained that. Right. And because there is no point where you can say, well, I've arrived, I've made it, we're always in a state of becoming. Yeah. And what that means is that there's never a dot on the map. You know, you can stick a pin in the map and say, okay, once I'm there, then we're done. No, once you've arrived at a particular place in your life, that means that there's something new for you to do, and there's something next, and there's always more. And as long as there's breath in our bodies, God gave us his very best. Like we are his very best handiwork. We are his, like when you look at just the way that the human body's designed and how the human mind functions and all the different things that he gave us that makes us special, right? When you look at that, there's nothing that he wastes. There's no part of us. There's no trauma he wastes. There's no pain he wastes. There's no part of our journey he wastes. Yes. He doesn't waste anything. We're all too valuable. He loves us too much. And he's way too concerned with us achieving purpose, right? Then you know, he's way too concerned with us achieving purpose to just allow us to just flounder and say, okay, you've reached this particular thing, so you're done. So as long as there's breath in our lungs, there's more for us to do. Yeah. So how does that look functionally? It means that once you've arrived somewhere, that means there's another destination that you got to get to at some point. Yeah. And we do that. We make those twists and turns through obedience. Yes. And that's why, you know, obedience in my mind is akin, I think it jives well with the concept of alignment. So let's be honest, right? We're all human. It's inevitable that we all have an idea of what the win looks like. Yes. You know, and I don't know about anybody else. I'm pretty competitive. and I probably would, in school, what you would call a gunner, right?
Oh, okay.
The kid who asked the extra question, well, what about that? And everybody's mad
like,
because
please
you created like extra homework for everybody else. I stopped doing it as I got older. Your peers like beat it out of you over time, but I'm probably still that way in some sense as an adult. So I have all my life. I've had really clear pictures of what success looked like, of what the win looked like for me, of what arriving looked like for me, and the things I wanted, and the things even my calling and my gifting and trying to pursue what God called me to be. Even that, I had a picture of it. Like, this is what it looks like. This is where I'll do it. This is how I'll do it. This is how I'll get there.
Related.
So I've always had an idea of what life looked like for me. And what's been funny is I've wanted to be many things when I grew up. I wanted to be an astronaut at one point. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But I found out that you had to have a certain eyesight, and I wear contacts, and without them, I'm blind as a bat. So you have to have like 20/20 uncorrected or something like that. I don't know if that's still true, but I remember learning that back then. So that kind of killed that one. Let's see. I also wanted to be the Black Pavarotti because I studied classical music in college. Right. I wanted to be a lawyer, a politician, a sports agent. Let's see, and eventually an executive and a pastor.
So you always had the desire to be an executive and pastor?
Well, eventually, that came later. That came later. Things. Yeah, those are kind of different seasons of my life, and I've always loved music and thought I was going to, do that, and I still do in some form. That's cool. But I will say that for a long time, I had this lingering sense in the back of my mind that I was called to ministry and called to pastor and speak and all that. And by the way, being called to ministry and being called to pastor and being called to preach aren't always the same thing. And I hope people understand. I hope people get that, and maybe we'll get into that at some point. Yeah, that's another conversation. But I always had a sense of that. And once I accepted, because I've ran
how
from.
How long did you run?
Oh my God, decades probably.
Yeah.
I preached my initial sermon in my early 20s, but I taught Bible study and stuff before, even before that in my teens and in college and stuff. And the idea that I could pick up that mantle, never. It's like, no, there's no way. Yeah, of course, it's frightening, right? It's frightening, right? Let you not be many teachers because you'll, have the stricter judgment and all that, right? Yeah. Like I don't want, I didn't want to be what I saw. And to be frank, the kind of the idea of the pastor as I saw it for many years, especially growing up. The big guy with the Jerry curl that drove the Cadillac, and I don't mean to be pejorative. I know they're great men of God that have S curls, and some of my favorite preachers have S curls, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful. I'm just, just kind of that quote unquote stereotype. It just never aligned with me. So I was resistant to it, and I don't think honestly, it wasn't until I met my pastor, who at the time, I think he was a youth pastor, that I saw a pastor that I could relate to. Like, he was just a regular guy. He dressed like a regular guy. He talked like a regular guy. He laughed and made jokes, and he was fun and all that. But still really like super nice with the word, and just really, I could tell, just a really good and godly guy. I don't think it was until then that I said, okay, maybe I can do it. If I can do it like that, then maybe I can do it. But even in sort of accepting that, the way that it all came together, it wasn't even close to what I planned it. Like I would have done it all faster, it would have all been a lot cleaner and a lot nicely packaged and all that. And I had to go through some stuff, and I had to mess up, and I had to sit myself down at points and, take breaks from ministry and make mistakes and, embarrass myself and all kinds of stuff, and go to different, move different places and all kinds of different things that were all a part of my journey. And, I think like I shared with you guys at Bible study, that when I look back, the way that I got, I've been able to do a lot of the things that I've always dreamed about doing, right? And that's so dope. But the way that I got there wasn't anywhere close to how I planned it. But it wasn't how I planned it, but being obedient at different particular kind of decision points in my life eventually got me to where God was trying to take me. And it didn't look like what I thought it would, but when I said yes to something I sensed God leading me or asking me to do, it moved me a little bit closer. Because there was a whole lot of no's that moved me away, where I was disobedient or wilding out or, just off track and tripping. But as God continued to, in my, the way I sense it, chase my heart, as He did that and drew me close, obedience became a more regular practice in my life. And as it became a more regular practice, then those yeses became more frequent. And in a sense, you gain momentum around it. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, because as your flesh dies and as your spirit becomes stronger and you're able to overcome, your negative impulses or your disobedient impulses, right? By your spirit becoming stronger through some of those things we talked about earlier, through prayer and regular worship and regular reading of the word and those, healthy community and those kinds of things that help you deal with some of your stuff and help your spirit get stronger. You're able to, what I found in my life is I've been able to say yes more to things that I sense God trying to get me to do. And as those yeses moved me in the direction that I sense God trying to take me. And it was that, not necessarily my well-crafted plan, right? Many of the plans of the man's heart, but God's purpose will prevail. Right. Like it was the obedience more than the well-crafted plan. And this is not me saying don't plan, don't strategize. I am a strategy guy.
That's your number one skill, right?
I guess so, right? I am a strategy guy, right? But ultimately, it's being sensitive to God's voice or His leading to do whatever He's saying at a particular time, so that you can move wherever He's trying to take you. So
that's so important. Yeah. So we're not going to use the B word. We're not going to use balance. But how does managing that excitement with the strategy, with the not over planning, with the not manipulating too much, letting God lead, how does that all play? Because it's hard when you are a doer, you're a go-getter, you're a gunner. Yeah. How do you manage that?
That's a great question. For me, I think all those things are healthy, right? All those things are healthy in and of themselves, but they've all got to be submitted to a heart that wants to be obedient to God, right?
Back to obedience.
Yeah, it's still got to be submitted. All those things, all those gifts, all those abilities, all those traits and proclivities, they've still got to be submitted to a heart that says, "Okay, God, this is what I sense you trying to do, so that's what I'll do," and that matters more than my desire to do my plan. Or that desire is more than that matters more than my desire to win at a particular thing. Or that matters more than my desire to be the best at a particular thing. Only child. Growing up as an only child. One of the toughest things I had to overcome was kind of a silo mentality, where I thought, well, okay, God, it's just me and you.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, Jesus, as long as I got King Jesus, I don't need nobody else. And I can just take my word and I can go over here in solitude and isolation, which are important at times, right? But I can go over here and I can grow and progress and move along in my Christian journey. And it didn't work. And it wasn't until I got in community with some other guys that were trying to move in the same direction. Shout out to my submission band family. It wasn't until then that I really started seeing actual fruit, because I was around people who would say, like, hey, buddy, don't do that. You know?
Right, because there's no mirror. It's almost like a mirror.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't know that there's something on your nose because you can't see it. You like this. Like, seem like there's something there, but you know. Right. But what community does is it helps us stay accountable to the things that we've set out to do. So if I said, and it's really a simple thing, it's really simple. You know, as a believer, as a Christian, we don't need to get into all, the laundry list, but it's not so much a list, but a heart, a desire to please God and to live in a way that honors Him and reflects Him well. Yeah. It's not a bunch of rules and regulations. It's a heart that says, God, because I love you. Yes. Out of that heart of love, and that love, the obedience flows out of that. Yes. Right? So because I love you, I want to follow. Because I love you, I'm going to continue to chase you and follow. Disciple means follower. It's simple that you said, you know what, I'm going to follow. So if people are around you who know that that's who you said you were, and that's who you claim to be, at some point somebody's got to have the right to say, hey, what are you doing when you're doing something that doesn't align, right, with what you said or what you're trying to be. Right. And community is important in that way. But also, we all mess up. We all have trauma. We all have issues. We all have heartbreak. We all have problems. Life is tricky. Life is hard. Yeah. Life is hard in a lot of ways. But one of the blessings is that God created us to live in godly community, even us introverts, because I'm an only child and an introvert.
Oh, wow. So it's work for you to be around.
It's work, and it is work. It is work, and it takes understanding and calibrating what I need at a given time. Yeah. I know that if I've been around people for a couple of days straight, I'm going to need some quiet time. I need some quiet time so I can recalibrate, and I'm okay now, right? But that community is so important, because you need people around you who will hold you to what you said, hold you to your end of the bargain, so to speak. Yeah. And I think one of the blessings is that, God didn't create us to be islands or to live in isolation or just go live in caves alone. Right. He created us to live in community in ways that help us become better, and for us to grow. Iron sharpens iron. So does one man sharpen the countenance of another. Yeah. And as we bump up against one another in community and do life and live life together and encounter issues and go through our respective storms and challenges, and as we help one another through that, God has a way of refining us and continuing to build out our character that helps us grow and be better. Yeah,
community is so important.
Yeah.
And it does take effort to be around people. Maybe because I'm an only child too, so I know I like to do things on my own. Mm-hmm. But it's important to be around people. And like you said, in the Bible, they always talk about, how you're supposed to be, the benefits of church, the benefits of being around.
Absolutely.
Iron sharpens iron. And so how can you recommend, or what do you recommend for people? Is there anything in the area that they can do to, have community around them? Or
sure. So,
example.
So there are a lot of churches so let me first say this. One, you need to be in a church.
Amen.
I'm not just saying that because I'm a pastor.
Right.
But in all seriousness, you need to be in a church somewhere where you're connected and being taught and growing. Yeah. And where you can serve and begin to flesh out your gifts and your talents and figure out what those things look like. Mm-hmm. And somewhere where you can give and support and practice proper stewardship, right? It's important to be under some kind of covering for those reasons, along with some others. But also within that church structure, you got to find your tribe. And
so a tribe within the church?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to find a tribe of because if you're, if you're 25, then maybe your tribe isn't, you're a 25-year-old woman, then your tribe probably isn't 45-year-old guys,
Okay.
If, you may need to find some 20-something, some women, some early 30s women that are moving in the same direction, and maybe some who are a little further up the road than you, who can say, hey, these are some things you need to look out for, but also that you can do stuff with and hang out with, and will encourage you, and call you when you on that date and it's getting late and you didn't check in, right? You check in and say, yo, you all right,
Exactly.
But finding your tribe, and in some churches, that looks like Sunday school. In some churches, that's a serving team or a serving opportunity where we serve together. So we all usher together, or we're all in the choir together, or we all do the children's, the nursery together, or whatever that is, right? Or we're all trustees together, or whatever, whatever that community looks like. In our church, we have those things, but we also have small groups.
Oh, I love the life group, small groups.
Yeah, life groups or small groups where people get together. They meet in somebody's house or somebody's home and get together and either study the Bible or read a book together or cover a particular topic together or something like that. Or maybe align around a particular interest. Well, we all love playing cards. Yeah. So tell you what, we're going to get together and we're going to play spades, and then we'll have some kind of devotional thought, and the spades, if you play spades, especially if it's black people playing spades.
I don't even mess with that.
Yeah, like it's going to get competitive, it's going to get crazy, but at least, when you run into Boston, you say, Boston, God bless it.
God bless it. Put God in there.
Right? Instead of the other thing you might say when you set somebody at the family reunion.
Right.
In the midst of a pretty significant ministry transition. I won't get into it here, but it's really dope. Really excited about this next season in my life and my ministry. I'll be back at Sharon Bible Fellowship for their young adult Bible study the first Friday of next month, which is March. So I'll be there. And then there's some other things coming up that I'm working on that I can't quite disclose yet. But if you're interested in keeping up with what's happening with the Joneses, you can follow me on Instagram at Jason R. Jones. I'm also Jason R. Jones on Twitter. I don't tweet as much as I used to unless there's an award show or a game on, or unless I have like a random stream of consciousness. I'm also J Jones on Facebook, and pretty soon you can catch me at jasonrjones.net. Finishing out the website now, but you can catch me there. God bless you, Brianna. Thank you so much for, letting me be a part of this, and hopefully our conversation helps somebody. If you're interested in having more dialogue around any of these, just reach out. I'd love to talk more or come help you, however I can with your journey as, you figure out what God's trying to do in your life. So God bless you.